pray you'd give us the energy and the wisdom to really be able to discern the intent of these things and whether or not they're good for the people of Georgia. We ask your blessing on everybody here and their families. Thank you, Lord, for just being our God. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. One other thing, and it's not for your benefit, but maybe others that might be watching this. If you've got a bill that has made it out of committee, you've got to come by and fill out one of those little sheets to request that get on the calendar. And I'll do that again today when we get in session. But we're having a little bit of confusion with that. You've got to come by and fill out one of those forms. Okay. Mr. Hamilton, ready to go. I'm sorry, James is.
Are we on? Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Might I say it's a lovely looking tie you have on over there today, Mr. Chairman.
I thought a lot of yours.
You obviously love your wife as much as I love mine, so thank you. I bring before you today House Bill 92. This is a bill that takes the no excuse in-person early voting and changes that from a current 45-day status down to the 3 weeks prior to the election, including a mandatory Saturday. The only exception in there is that if there's a ballot that does not have a state or federal candidate on there, then that Saturday is optional. And that's all the bill does, and I'll be happy to yield for any questions if you have any.
Are there questions? One comment. Did we make a change on addition to additional? Where was that in the bill? We had a technical.
Yeah, there's a word.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear the comments. Well, I'm always happy when the Rules Committee perfects our legislation.
You may.
I had a question whether or not that should be for additional AL rather than addition voting. Should it be additional instead of addition?
That's correct. Okay. I'm sorry. Thank you for catching that.
At the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion for a technical change.
Okay. Mr. Hannon.
Mr. Hamilton, I certainly support your bill. I think it's a great idea. I certainly support it. But was there discussion about even making it shorter than that?
There was a lot of I'm sorry. A great question. A lot of discussion on that. Matter of fact, my initial bill that I drafted was with 1 week and 1 week additional option. But this is a very broad consensus across the board for many, many different factors, and we felt like that this was a compromise that both parties could agree to. The League of Women Voters has agreed to this. The ACCG, GMA is not opposed to it, and so we've got a broad consensus in it. We thought that if we reduced it any more, less than 3 weeks, that we would run a very likely challenge by the Department of Justice. And you know, all voter law has to be approved by the Department of Justice, and we feel very comfortable with the legislation as drafted.
Fine, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no other questions, I'd ask for favorable consideration.
Okay. Ms. Manning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Hamilton, can you tell me, do you know how much this is going to save your local counties for the election process? Do you have a guesstimate?
I can't give you a total, but what I have is I have a variety. We surveyed, or ACCG surveyed all the respective counties, and what we found was a broad range. We had counties that said that it will not save them any money, but it'll be less confusing because of the overlap between registration and election. We have one county that said that it'll save them $100,000 a year. We have many rural counties that the dollar value is far left, but in some cases they estimate that their early voting costs will actually decrease by 50% by dropping this. So overall, it's a substantial savings, but we've not quantified that across the state.
Will you be able to provide that when the bill comes to the floor?
Well, I'm not sure we have that information from every I can give you examples of a variety of counties that have made this statement. Henry County, for example, is saying $100,000. My own county of Forsyth, they're estimating, depending on the election year, somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000. And again, we have a number of rural counties that their early voting costs might only be $4,000 or $5,000, but they expect it to drop by half, by 50%.
Thank you.
Okay, there's no more. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Leader.
I'd like to be recognized for a motion if there are no more questions.
Okie doke, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt a rule substitute for technical correction on the House Bill 92, correcting what is an obvious Scribner's error on line 101. The fourth word from the beginning of the line, addition, will be changed to the word additional. So it will read, in part, may provide for additional voting location.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Doctor, you're up.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and distinguished members. I hope y'all can hear me this morning. I think my seatmate Mark Hatfield was sick last week and I got what he had. So I bring you House Bill 60. This is a much needed bill to help attract young veterinary graduates to rural counties with food animal services. What this is, these food animal service, it takes a lot more work, which you all know that's what I was, and you serve a lot longer hours, and you make a lot less salary. So these young veterinarians are coming out now, they are not offering food animal service. We have 46 counties now in the state of Georgia without service to food animals. And these are animals that we eat for food, the cattle, the sheep, the goats, etc. So it's a much needed bill. What this does, this relates to a service council loan, and what it does, it provides for purchase of these loans for educational purposes to these students who have completed veterinary medical degree. And some of these students now graduating with excess of $100,000 loans. And so if we can entice them to get this loan paid, maybe they can go into these counties. It'll be designated and they'll stay for 4 years, and at the end of 4 years they'll set up their practice. So with that, I just ask you to know that not only will this help now producers, but it will help the state. If we were to have a drastic disease come in pertaining to large animal or food animals, we'd be shortage for veterinary help, and we'd be in drastic thing. And one last thing is, you all know that this, even if you pass it today, there's no funds to make it available until the funds are appropriated. So it would just get it in action and ready for a quick access. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I close unless there's questions and ask you to consider it.
Are there questions? Okay. Mr. Watson, we're fine, Dr.
That's it?
Yes, sir. Would you come up, please? Have you got 147 with you in there?
Yes, sir, I do.
why don't you just give a real brief again on that one, because I think we've got some questions that we don't know the answers to.
Okay. House Bill 147 is basically an amendment to the Patient Right to Know Act of 2001. It will add the question of whether or not a physician has malpractice coverage.
Are there questions? Because I've heard that there were some, so and we were probably going to ask Ms. Cooper to help with some of them.
Representative, we just wanted to get some clarification on your bill as introduced was just Section 1 of the substitute at this point. Is that correct?
Is the substitute for House Bill 147.
Right, and your bill as it was introduced and considered, was it generally in this form, or because I don't have the as introduced in the folder. In other words, when your bill was originally introduced.
Oh, to the committee, it came in as the substitute, correct?
Okay, and when your bill was introduced, the actual bill itself that it started as was just Section 1 of the substitute. Is that a correct statement? Or maybe you can give us some direction on that. We're just trying to figure out
there
what it was.
There have been several drafts of this, and what we tried to do in Section 1 was to tease out the physicians that were retired. Mm-hmm. In other words, a physician that comes and wants to keep his license yet may want to work at the free clinic. At the free clinic, he has immunity from malpractice, so he would not keep his malpractice insurance, yet could continue to work there. So that's why we tried to add that.
And perhaps the chair could just help us to know what was a committee add on the bill as opposed to what was originally introduced. In other words, what was added by the committee that was not originally introduced. If you
mean the amendment?
If anything.
The bill was not amended, Mr. Chairman, was not amended in committee. The author of the bill, the board that oversees the physicians, I can't remember whether Section 4 was originally in the bill or not, which is just adding for reporting so that we can get some statistics. The one section was Section 3 that the Board of Medicine came to the author and said they would like a little bit of discretion on charging fees. What happens is, if a physician moves and moves his office and doesn't notify the board in 30 days, he gets a fine. And that fine goes out on that website looking like they've done something against him. And for little minor infractions like that, they were just asking that they have the discretion. Let me tell you, when the Board of Medicine hits doctors with fines, they're humongous, and they're not going to be letting up on those fines. They're just asking for the discretion on little minor things like not reporting that you move your office. And I have to admit, we haven't moved our office in 20-something years, but I didn't know that was a requirement, and if we had moved our office, Tom could have been hit with a fine. So it's that kind of little small infraction that they're asking for.
So as not to have a small infraction appear or be perceived by the public as being some sort of larger disciplinary issue when in fact it's not.
No, not at all.
Okay, thank
you. Any other questions? Right.
Representative Watson, I don't know how the composite medical board appropriated money for their action?
Yes, they and I have the budget here, but they take in about, I think the number is about twice as much as actually they spend with the fee for. Each year we have to renew our license and pay the amount of money. So they're actually taking in about twice as much as they spend as they appropriate.
Okay, I'm just looking at Section 4 and the reporting requirements.
Oh.
And I read in here, the board shall compile a report for the governor and General Assembly, statistical comparative data analysis using information from physician profiles, so on and so forth. I assume this is all confidential information, is it not?
The profile, the physician profile, is available to patients, but the compilation of the data has not been done, and that's what we're asking that to be reported back to the legislature, and that actually is something that will not cost any money other than to hit the computer button, spit it out. And
so they already have all the data?
They have the data, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Leader.
Thank you, Dr. Watson. Thank you for bringing this. On line 50 in section number 1, where we talk about a minimum of 5 hours a week, what is the rationale for that standard? I think what you're trying to get at there is a distinction of semi-retired or retired physicians.
Right.
Is the 5 hours some sort of national standard, or is that an arbitrary number? Where did that come from?
The Patient Right to Know Act of 2001 has about 16 questions that is delineated by the legislature, by our previous act of 2001. There are other questions. I think there are about twice that many questions that they're actually asking also. The survey that we get every year, every 2 years, when we fill out our renewal application, and that is the definition that we took from their definition of retirement.
Well, just as a hypothetical, if I could follow up, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. If I was on vacation 2 weeks and then I came back and worked 10 hours, would that instantly, and I'm not saying that flippantly, would that instantly disqualify me if I were a physician for?
I certainly think that's within discretion by their definition. You would, the way I would look at that when I would check the boxes, it would be sort of the average. How many hours do you work per week?
But it really doesn't say average; it says minimum.
No.
That's the reason I was wondering where that standard comes from.
Yeah, that is. We tried to come up with what would be the right definition of a retired physician working a few hours in the clinic, and that's what the board had used in the past, and that's what they had found to work for them. I'm certainly agreeable to go up to 10 hours per week. I mean, that would certainly be, I think, certainly within the realm of possibilities of a physician working 3 hours in the clinic.
Be, and I think the author would probably be very agreeable if you would like to put in there an average of a minimum. The board is doing, and he was following the board's suggestion. The board is just trying to find out. We have slightly over 15,000 physicians in the state, and we have no idea how many are retired. And as we go forth with this new national health care bill and all, and trying to look at our workforce and what we're going to need to be able to adequately take care of patients, it was just more information that they were trying to ascertain. But I certainly think that if you would like to put in an average of 5 hours a week, that we would accept that as an amendment if the committee would be so kind to let us add that.
Mr. Earhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to follow up on Chairman Golick's question. When you read line 34, Representative Watson, this amendment to the original bill, any physician or authorized personnel violating any provision of this chapter, and you're changing shall to may, and this is not, is it not true? This is not referring just to this small section. This is the entire chapter, and we're making a fairly substantive change. I think I understood the logic trail with respect to small violations and that kind of thing, but I mean, the original policy of the legislature was that there will be fines. Now we're saying there only may be fines for violations for the rest of this chapter. That's a fairly substantive change.
It is, and it is one that was asked by the Composite State Board of Medical Examiners to their discretion. My experience with the Composite State Board, not personally, but in a large group, we have 59 physicians in my group, and we've had issues where physicians have to go in front of the Composite State Board. And if anything, we're guilty until proven innocent, and it's a difficult time. But having said that, if you look at the questions that most of the questions that we're asking, as in like location, where you trained, and then the more serious ones are malpractice, settlements or judgments, which are that you have to report within five days. It's not the 30 days. But they don't consider those light by any means. That was not what they were asking. They were asking if the majority, over 50% of the ones that they were having to fine, and that's $500 a day that they don't turn it in, was having to do with young physicians who were moving, changing from their residency or changing from where they were located, and they were not notifying them within the 30 days. And they wanted the discretion not to fine those physicians, young physicians, that was over 50% of the number.
Yes.
I think I understand that logic trail. Wouldn't it be more prudent, though, to identify those types of violations for the May provision instead of all of the others, that we had a policy of shall create a fine? I understand you don't want to fine those young physicians for that. I'm just curious about the wholesale change.
Mr. Willard.
Following up with Mr. Earhart, I have some questions about, from a parliamentary procedure standpoint, are we able to make these kind of changes in committee? No. I had a bill the other day that we took back because of a shall to a may.
Yeah, we will not. Mr. Will.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, I want to refer back to the issue that the leader brought up on line 15 on the first page. Presently reads, whether physician actively sees patients and a minimum of 5 hours a week, semicolon. Would you be averse to a modification of that so that after the word patients, we would strike through the word a minimum and put an average of 5 hours per week, and then after the word week and before the semicolon, during the current calendar year?
No, I would not be averse to that. I think that's a good idea.
At the proper time, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
Can't do it. Okay. Mr. Mills.
Thank you, Representative Watson. I had a question on page 2 of the bill, line 47, where you're talking about the report that's going to be filled out, and this was part of the second section that was added, I believe, to get more information. How far will we go? Because in the middle of line 47, it says the report shall include, but shall not be limited to. So in other words, what does the board intend to ask all my physicians in my district? Because I understand you've got 5 questions here, but they're not limited to. There could be 100.
What that specifically was aiming at, there are 16 questions that you have with the Patient Right to Know Act, but the board also adds in other questions there, and like the retirement question that they add, and we were looking at trying to get at that information also. That's what it was. I think it's about twice that many. I think about 30 questions. Right now it's not onerous, at least from a physician standpoint, filling out that.
Mr. Whip.
Let me ask you this. The question would be directed to the chairman of the committee. There have been a lot of good questions here asked, and we could either try to fix this bill on the floor, or we could send this bill back to committee for some additional work, given some of the input that you've received. It might be easier for your committee, which has a certain element of specialty about these sort of things, to send it back to your committee, given the questions that have been raised here, given some of the thoughts that Dr. Watson has given after the questions that he's received, to simply send it back to your committee to sort of tinker with it some more and bring it back out so that we could get it passed. If that's you, I'll make a motion right now.
the era of the questions are being raised because Dr. Watson and I both know how the board works and trust the board, but we will make it more explicit for members of this General Assembly so that they are more comfortable with the bill.
Mr. Chairman, I so move to return the bill to committee.
Go ahead. Motion and a second. Everybody in favor of sending it back to committee, say aye. Aye. I'm not even going to ask if it's opposed. Okay. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Okay, now members of the committee. Mr. Bearden.
And Mr. Wilp, it's not Levitas. I just want to go back to a bill that we talked about a few days ago, House Bill 53, that dealt with the private detective business and private security business. We're referring to post-certified police officers that could work private security without having to go through the school. We have an amendment that's on your desk that if the committee will approve, will travel with the bill to the floor, where we would strike lines 34 of the bill and replace it with an amendment that's on your desk that says Georgia Peace Officer Standards and Training Act while providing private security services. That way, they will know that if they're working private security service, their post-certification would exempt them from the school, but if it's going to be private detective, they would have to go to the school because of certain areas with civil proceedings that the majority leader brought up, and hopefully this will take care of that problem. And I ask for your favorable consideration on the bill.
Question, Mr. Roberts.
I think he wanted to be recognized. He did. He waves.
You waive the question. Other questions? Okay, we've got, we have an amendment. Do I have a motion to approve his amendment?
Move we approve.
Any objection? Hearing none, okay. Got the amendment approved. All right. Yes, sir.
For purpose of clarification, the amendment is AM 350220.
Yes, sir. Okay. Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, and please, the committee, I'd like to make a motion that HB 26 be recommitted to the committee from whence it came.
Second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to recommit HB 26. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? It is recommitted.
Chairman Rice.
Mr. Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring to the committee House Bill 59 out of the Higher Education Committee. This bill is a bill that simply requires that the post-secondary education schools in the USG system use the SAVE system to verify the legal presence of students attempting to enroll in the university system of Georgia.
Y'all hang on.
59.
No.
Who we got? Representative Hughley.
Ms. Hughley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought it was permanently glued down there for a moment.
We tried.
I give you an A for effort. My question to the author of the bill is, how does this bill comply with our homeland security provisions that are in place? Is this in compliance with what the homeland security provisions are for the entire country, or is Georgia starting something new? Or tell us where we are with that.
No, Ms. Hughley, I thank you for the question. All this bill does is to simply add post-secondary education, which was specifically set aside in the original Senate Bill 529 bill as a public benefit. If you define it as a public benefit, Then you have the capability to access the SAVE system, which is the systematic alien verification for entitlements system that allows the university system to check the legal status of the person determining to enroll. Over a period of time, in several places, like in 8 U.S.C. Section 1623, post-secondary education in the U.S. Code is defined as a public benefit, and therefore the SAVE system is the vehicle to look at that public benefit in terms of whether they're capable of having one. In terms of other states that use the SAVE system, I am not aware. I can't answer that question. All I can tell you is that the university system has 300,000 students, but they really can't tell you. Even though they say there's 501 undocumented people, they really can't tell you how many people are here without here legally to use that benefit. And the reason is because they do not use the SAVE system, which is the most complete system of identification for those who are here on legal status.
One further question, Mr. Chairman. I know that these are tough budgetary times, so I'm assuming that there is a cost-saving factor with this bill. Can you tell me what you anticipate that we're going to save by doing this?
Yeah, thank you for the question. The cost of checking the verification status of using the SAVE system is 50 cents per transaction, with a maximum of $1.50 for any transaction for that particular person. The number of people here who would fill out an affidavit saying that they're a legal alien and providing an alien number is something to be determined by us taking this action, and that's the only way you find out whether or not they're here and legally taking advantage of the benefit. Fact of the matter is, if it gives one person here that's here legally as a citizen or a legal alien access to the university system, that's what we should do. We should not provide public benefits, public money, $1.7 billion in teaching money out of the state for anybody who's not here legally.
If the chair will indulge one final question, then does the bill allow or provide that at some point we're going to get some report back to see what this number is that we're checking for?
The access to the SAVE system does provide reporting capability, and you can go online publicly and see how many people have signed up for it and what their actions have been.
So the answer then is no, we're not going to get anything back.
There's nothing in the bill that specifically indicates to the legislature, nor for any other of the benefits that are already required by law in Georgia to use the SAVE system. There's no reporting back on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Yes, Mr. Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Rice, thanks for bringing this initiative. I do have a question just from the standpoint of meaning. If you'll flick with me on line 49, page 2, where the bill adds the word additional. And my question to you is additional public benefit defined in the federal code, or otherwise, what does that mean, additional? I know what public benefit is. I know public benefit's defined.
All this does is give the Attorney General the option, and this was in the code. As you can see, it's only one line change. It was to provide the Attorney General the option of choosing additional public benefits to be listed as a public benefit. The complexity in this is that the SAVE system can only be accessed in the federal government if state code includes a name of the public benefit that's being requested for verification. So all we're doing is providing the Attorney General the option of giving additional public benefits to include in the list.
And again, my question is, who defines an additional public benefit? Is that in the federal code? Or is that something
there's a list in as says in the state as defined in 8 U.S.C. section 1611 and 1621 on line 50.
Okay. Thank you. No more questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your favorable consideration.
Ms. Mr. Lindsay.
Mr. Chairman, we wanted to present a bill, HB 232. HB 232 is a simple measure. There's been some confusion in the business community, heightened by the amount of the additional funds that we put into law last year. To simply clarify that a bona fide commission salesperson is not considered a lobbyist, simply by virtue of his job of selling products to either local or state government.
Questions? Okay, no questions. Mr. Weldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Whip, concerning this issue, has there been some thought? I know that I've been involved in some conversations where CEOs were going to come down and address their delegation, and I was wondering if there was some consideration regarding the confusion that and the issue that came up was that if a CEO is going to address his delegation, that he may need to register as a lobbyist.
There are numerous other issues out there that I've heard from. What we're trying to do here is deal with an immediate problem and take care of it as narrowly and quickly as possible. I do think there's some legitimate other concerns out there that need to be more hotly discussed and worked out, but this was simply something that I think everyone was on the same page in agreeing to. This is a good bipartisan bill that I think everybody agrees these folks should not be caught in the net. It doesn't serve any real purpose to do so. Quite frankly, it expands the potential folks who would have to register such a large number that we would lose sight, perhaps, of the folks that we really want to keep monitoring. So we want to try to keep this one as narrow as possible. I do understand other folks want to take a look at other aspects, and I welcome them to do so. But let's get this narrow exception done so that we can not have the net cast so wide that we lose sight of what we're really trying to do underneath our ethics laws.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I'm going to set a calendar. First one, HB 30. I'm sorry.
I want to make a parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman. Once a bill is assigned to a particular category of sections of rules, can it be moved except by committee?
It can be moved to a different, you mean open?
By whom? I'm saying once it's set up by category.
I think I can do it.
Okay. The reason I'm asking that HB 30 was under a different category, I believe, yesterday.
Every time I've seen it was under open, I'm going to put it on modified open.
All right, sir.
If that's...
Yes, can it be asked for today, or shall I wait?
I'm going to do it right now.
Okay.
The calendar, set the calendar. The first one is HB 30. Do I hear a move?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that it be moved from open to modified. Open. So
that's where it's going to go modified open. Anybody object? Okay. HB 53 with the amendment AM 350220. Any objection? HB 92. Do I hear a move?
Move.
Any objection? And HB 232.
Move.
Any objection? That's the calendar.